Hello, welcome back to the YouTube channel. I am Nick from Australia. Welcome to the St. George Illawarra Dragons 2020 season review. I'm going to be reviewing the St. George Illawarra Dragons season tonight. It's currently Sunday night, 7:55 p.m, November 15. Hope everyone is doing well. I hope everyone's had a great weekend. I was meant to do the Dragons one yesterday, but I decided to have the day off and just have a bit of a rest, I guess you could say. And I'm going to get into my Dragons review right now. But before I get into it, I will be announcing that I will be doing my Game 3 State of Origin preview probably tomorrow night. So stay tuned for that. And if you're new to the channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button. And if you see a bit of sweat in this video from my bloody forehead, it's because it's very hot here today. In Lismore, it was 35 yesterday and it's about 33 today. So it's very warm. So I do apologise about that. But without further ado, let's get into the St. George Illawarra Dragons 2020 season review. Now, it was definitely a disappointing year for the Red V. I'm just going to go through some of their results. They finished in 12th position in 2020. Not a great year for the Dragons. They had a couple of really good weeks, but just not consistent enough to make the 8. And, you know, at the back end of the season, there was two or three games where they could have won, which I reckon might have got them in the 8, and then they just sort of fell away. So, not a good year, but obviously in round 1, they started off against the West Tigers, and they got beaten that game on the Sunday night game, 24 points to 14. And then the week after that, they played Penrith, and they somehow got run down in that one. They got beat 32 to 28 in that one, which was a very entertaining game. I do remember that game. I think it might have been the first Friday game of round 2. And then, obviously, the COVID lockdown happened after that. And the first game back from COVID lockdown, they played the Warriors, which they were expected to win. They got absolutely smashed 18-0. I think that was the game where the Warriors completed every set except for maybe one. So, the Dragons were disappointing in that one. And then the game against the Bulldogs on the Monday, I think it was the Queen's Birthday game, the traditional Queen's Birthday game they have every year between Canterbury and St. George. And the Bulldogs beat them 22 points to 2. And I think that was the game where we all thought Paul McGregor was going to get the sack straight there, right there after that game. And I do remember there was an interview on NRL 360, and if you watch that interview again, for all money, you think McGregor's gone anyway. He got given a couple of weeks to try and redeem himself, and then the next week, they took on their big rivals, the local derby, Cronulla, and they ended up smashing Cronulla 30 points to 16, which was a very good effort for them, especially with McGregor under all sorts of pressure. Then they found some consistency. They bounced back. They found back-to-back wins for the first time, and they knocked off the Gold Coast 20 points to 8. And then, obviously, I guess you could say it was the Anzac game, but it wasn't on Anzac Day this year because of COVID. They took on the Roosters there. They got beaten that one, 26-12. I remember that game very well because it was a Friday night game, and the Dragons were in that game. So that game didn't really reflect on the score, but the Dragons were beaten in that one. And then they got beat by the Raiders in a real tight one there by 22 to 16. Very tight game there. Lost to the Raiders. No shame in going down to Canberra and losing to the Raiders in a tight one. So unlucky not to win that one. And then they absolutely thrashed Manly on a Sunday night, 34-4. That's a pretty impressive performance. Probably one of their best performances of the season. So that was a good win there. And then they beat the Bulldogs. They got out of jail. I've actually got the video clip on my phone where Corey Norman scored on the bell to pretty much win the game, where Marcelo Montoya dropped the ball and Norman scored. I remember doing a bit of an Instagram video, and my dad just jumps out of his seat. I don't know if I can play it. I don't know if you guys will be able to see it on here. Anyway, it's going to be fairly tough. Let me see. Oh, you probably won't be able to see it, but we'll have a crack. Hang on. Let's see if we can do it.
I can't believe it!
You can barely see it, but I'll show you guys again. I think it's better up close. Oh, you can't really see that well, can you? That's better. Look at my dad. So that was probably the most enjoyable Dragons win that I've seen all year. You know, my dad jumped out of his seat. I remember the game well. the Bulldogs were all over the Dragons. I think it was 22-10 or something. My dad walked out. He's like, fuck this shit. And then they come back. And then obviously what happened there with Corey Norman. Probably the only thing he's done all year, to be honest. So that was a good thing for the Dragons. And then they got beat by the Sharks in a real tight one. A bit of a robbery sort of game. I think if you go back and have a look at it, they were unlucky to lose to the Sharks. Then they got beat by Souths, 32-24 after leading 16-0, I think it was. Disappointing there. Losing to the Roosters, 24-16. No shame. And then going into round 14, 6 weeks until the season ended, Paul McGregor was told that the game against Parramatta would be his last game as head coach. And it was. And the Dragons did it for Paul McGregor, which was probably one of the best wins of the year. They beat him 14-12. A gutsy performance there. And then we're thinking to ourselves, the Dragons can still make the 8 at this stage. I think there was still 5 rounds to go. They were still possible to make the finals. And then they held on against the Broncos up there at Suncorp. They were lucky to win that one. Then this is where they imploded their season. They went down to the Gold Coast, 14 points to 10. That's where their season really imploded. And then I think they had to beat the Cowboys to mathematically still make it. They lost to the Cowboys in Golden Point in that one. And then they got beat by the Raiders, 37-8. They got beat by Newcastle, 42-18. And in the last round, they beat the Melbourne Storm, 30 points to 22, when Melbourne pretty much rested half their team. But, you know, that they did not have a good year, but they definitely had some really good moments. Obviously, beating the Bulldogs on the bell, which was a great moment for them. Beating the Eels and doing it for Paul McGregor in his last game as head coach for the Dragons. So, they definitely had some good moments, but they had some shocking moments as well. If I had to go through that season and say what their best win was, I'd say their best win was probably the game against Parramatta, where they did it for Paul McGregor at Bankwest Stadium. That was a pretty gutsy effort. And I'd say their best overall team performance was probably the win against Manly, 34 points to 4. Their worst performance, well, there's a couple of them that were pretty ordinary. I think the loss to the Warriors, the loss to the Bulldogs. I'd say their worst game of the year was against the Bulldogs. They were pretty diabolical in that one. I think losing to Canberra 37-8 is also pretty disappointing. But, you know, they had some good moments. They had some pretty bad moments. They didn't make the 8, so it wasn't a good year for the Dragons. But looking at some of their good players for the season, there goes my fucking mobile phone. Couple of great players for them. I thought Matt Duffy had a great year. I thought Zach Lomax was outstanding. Cameron McGuinness was terrific. Ewan Aiken had a great season. Who else was there that played well for the Dragons? What's his name? Jackson Ford played very well. Blake Laurie had a good year. You know, they had a couple of good fours, the Dragons. They had a couple of real decent sort of fours this year, the Dragons, but a couple of disappointing players for them. I thought Paul Vaughan was disappointing. He's normally a State of Origin 40. He was terrible this season. I thought Tarek Sims was disgusting. When he was there, he didn't do anything. It was just like a remote-controlled statue. Didn't do anything at all. And then Tyson Rizal as well. He obviously had his mind focused on Newcastle because he signed there at the start of the season. So I don't know why he didn't just go to Newcastle earlier because, you know, his mind wasn't on the Dragons. He was terrible this year. Who else was terrible? Corey Norman. Now, this is the thing with the Dragons. Is Corey Norman the problem with the St. George Illawarra Dragons? I'm going to say yes. I think he's a disease. He's too inconsistent. When he plays well, it's like once every 6 or 7 weeks. His defense is very terrible. His kicking game is ordinary. You know, he doesn't offer a whole lot, Corey Norman. I think, you know, the Dragons really should go in a different direction and try and get rid of Corey Norman. I know there's rumours that they've been trying to do that, but I think he needs to go. I think he's a disease at the Dragons, and I think his time is up at the Red V. I think they need to go in a different direction. Maybe blood that young player, Jaden Sullivan, the young 5'8" coming through. I think maybe blood him. I think Ben Hunt also had a pretty average season. I think he's probably... It's interesting with Ben Hunt. Is he a halfback? Is he a hooker? Is he a jersey 14? I think he's a better hooker. I think Cameron McGuinness can just slot straight in to that lock position if you wanted to, you know. But I don't know if Ben Hunt's a halfback anymore. I really don't know. He's just not consistent. I think the problem with the Dragons this year was their halves and some of their forwards weren't good. You know, Paul Vaughan was terrible. They need to get some better depth, I think, in their forwards. I don't have a problem with that back line, especially going into next year. You know, they've got Dufty, who had a great season. Ravalawa was awesome as well. Jordan Pereira was great. Zach Lomax was absolutely outstanding. Probably unlucky not to or probably unlucky not to make the State of Origin side, and probably unlucky not to win Centre of the Year as well. And Braden Williami looked pretty good before he got injured as well. So I've definitely got some good players in their outside backs, but I think their problem is their halves and probably a couple of their forwards. Going into next year, they haven't replaced Tyson Frizzell with anyone. They have gained Jack Bird from the Broncos. He started at the Dragons. He came through the Dragons system. He's a Dragons junior. Then he went to Cronulla. Then he obviously went to Brisbane, and he's had 2 terrible injuries at the Broncos. And they also signed that forward from the Sydney Roosters for next year, which I think is a good buy. I'm just got to try and pronounce his name, guys. It's very difficult to pronounce. I'm just grabbing him right here. He was at the Warriors for a while. What's his name? Posa for Masalao. I can't even fucking pronounce it, but you know what I'm talking about if you've been watching NRL all year. But I think he'll be a good buy for the Dragons. I think he'll be really strong. I think also losing James Graham is a bigger loss than what you actually think, because he brings so much experience and he's just a tough, hard player. So they're definitely going to miss James Graham. So I think the Dragons, if they go with these young players, I think it's a good thing for them as well. They've also lost Jacob Host. He's gone to South Sydney. So, you know, they've gained a little bit so far, but they need to gain a lot more for 2020, I think. And obviously with Paul McGregor getting sacked and they have got Anthony Griffin as head coach for 2020, I think a pass mark for the Dragons next year would be making the finals. I think they're a team that are capable of making the finals. I think Anthony Griffin's a great coach, and you know, everywhere he's gone, he's been, I guess he's been messed up, stuffed over. I guess fucked over in the last couple of years where he's been coaching. When he was at Penrith, he was coaching Penrith in 2018. They sacked him. The Panthers were sitting in the top 4, so it doesn't make much sense. But I think Anthony Griffin will do a great job at the Dragons. Not sure how they'll go next year, but I can see some improvement coming from the Dragons, that they just got to sort out their halves. And, you know, for me, it's really weird for me to see the Dragons down the bottom the last couple of years, because growing up as a kid, the Dragons were always at the top. They were dominant side. They were always in the top 4, you know. When I was a kid, the Dragons, you know, they had Wayne Bennett coaching them. They had guys like Soward and Hornby, and they were dominant in 2009, and they won the premiership in 2010, and they were dominant in 2011 and shit like that. So it's rare for me, and it feels weird to see the Dragons going so bad. So hopefully they can get back to the best soon, because I've got a bit of a soft spot for the Dragons. Obviously, my dad supports them, and I want the Dragons to do well because I think they're a great club, and I think they'll do some good things in the near future. Hopefully, Anthony Griffin can get the best out of their players, and hopefully they can get some better halves going into next year, because if their halves next year are Norman and Hunt or Norman and Sullivan, then I'm going to be a little bit worried about him, because I think Corey Norman needs to go. He's a disease. Ben Hunt's not a consistent halfback. So, you know, I think they've got some positives, but overall this year was disappointing. If I had to give their season a rating out of 10, I will probably give the Dragons season this year a 3.5 out of 10. Their best player for mine was Zach Lomax and Cameron McGuinness, and their worst player for mine, I would say Corey Norman and Tyson Frizzell. They were terrible in my opinion. But anyway, guys, that's going to wrap up my St. George Illawarra Dragons 2020 season review. If you enjoyed the video, make sure you guys go ahead and like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. I appreciate everyone who took the time to watch this video. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you guys in the next one.